To get started, we are going to be making a magic ring, and you can always follow that video that I have to do a magic ring. We'll be doing 8 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. Now the base of this bag is going to be all in single crochet, and as we get going to the body of the bag, we'll start to work in split single crochets. But for the base, I like keeping it easy and just using the single crochet stitches. Now, after single crocheting 8 inside the magic ring, we can go ahead and almost tighten that. I say almost because I do find it easy to leave a bit of a gap here until after your next round. That way it's just easier to work into. Also, grab your stitch marker because we want to keep that handy. We're going to be working continuously without joining this. So it's a great idea to have stitch marker. I can't even keep track if I don't have a stitch marker of where the beginning of my round is. So for round 2, we will be doing 2 single crochet stitches into each stitch around. So this is why it's smart to go ahead and mark that first stitch of the round. And I've got a big stitch marker there. And then go ahead and finish by working 2 single crochet stitches into each stitch around. And at the end of round 2, you will have a total of 16 stitches. Now, after the end of round 2, you can go ahead and tighten that center circle. And if you want, you can weave in that end. For round 3, we're going to start a pattern here. So we will do 2 single crochet stitches into the first stitch, marking the first stitch of the round. And then we will simply single crochet into the next stitch. And that's our repeat. So we're going to do 2 single crochet stitches and then 1 single crochet stitch. 2 single crochet stitches into the next and then 1 stitch into the next. Repeat that around, and at the end of round 3, we will have a total of 24 stitches. So now we're ready for round 4, and we're going to start by doing 2 single crochet stitches into the first and then marking the first stitch of the round. This is how every round for the base of this, the bottom of the bag, is going to start. And now we will single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So notice instead of doing 1, now we're doing 2 in between our increases. Now we will do 2 single crochets into the next, and then single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And that's our repeat around, and that will increase by 8. So at the end of round 4, we will have a total of 32 stitches. And now for round 5, this is going to be the last base round I show on camera because we're just doing some simple repeats here, and you can keep increasing until we get to the size that we want. So we're going to do 2 single crochet stitches into the first stitch. And then following our pattern from before, we are going to single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So each round, the amount that we single crochet between the increases just increases by 1. Then 2 single crochet into the next, and single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So for the next round that we would do, it would start with 2 single crochets in the first, and then we would single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. And then we'll just continue to do that. It increases by 8 stitches for each round. So I'm going to increase this bag. For this smaller size, I did 72 stitches. And for the larger bag, I will come back and I will tell you how many stitches I'm going to do for that. Now I have done this until I have 104 stitches. So that means I did 2 single crochets in one, and then I single crocheted in the next 11 for that repeat. And this is 104 stitches is what I'm going to go with for this larger size. Now the next 2 rounds are kind of setting us up for the body. This is where we're just simply going to be evening this out a bit. You might have a little bit of curl, but if you notice, if you set it on a flat surface and you were to block it, it can block quite flat. For this next round, we are simply going to single crochet into each stitch around. We're not increasing, we're just single crocheting into each stitch around. Now, as we single crochet into each stitch around, I just want to make a note that the next round we will be working split single crochets. And what this means is we will be working in between each V-stitch of this round on the next round. In order to have this be a little bit easier, When you work this round of single crochet stitches, you'll want to bring up the second loop a little bit higher than you normally do before you finish that stitch. What that does is it gives us a bit more space in that V so that we can easily get our hook into it for the next round when we start working those split single crochets. Now, after working that round of plain single crochet, we are going to do a round of split single crochet, which sets us up for what we need to be working in for the body of this bag. To do a split single crochet stitch, we're going to enter our hook into the center of the V of the next stitch. And when you come out the back of the hook, you'll know your placement is correct if you come out from the center of an upside down V on the back. Then we will yarn over and pull up our hook. We're going to pull the strand up higher than we normally would. We want to give that V plenty of space, which makes it easy to work into for the next round. Then we will go ahead and place our stitch marker. We're going to repeat that all the way around. We're simply going to be doing some split single crochet stitches into each stitch around. So we're not increasing or decreasing here. We're just working a round of split single crochet. Now, one thing I want to know is sometimes holding our hook slightly differently for this stitch can be an advantage. Some people will work their stitches where their hook might be angled this way. When your hook is angled this way, you might commonly find that your stitch height is shorter. That's because if we were to pull our hook this way, which is perpendicular to our work, then we would have the correct height for a stitch for your average stitch. Now for this split single crochet, you can kind of angle your hook this way, so more of the down direction, and that will also help increase the height of your stitch. So when it comes to crocheting, we often, whenever we're crocheting, we want to be like this with our work. But sometimes doing something a bit differently can give us an advantage where this will pull up this loop a little bit more, and that's what we want. So if you have a difficult time remembering to pull up each stitch, you can go ahead and when you do your stitches, kind of angle them from keeping your hook down lower, and that will automatically pull up that loop a bit more and help you to do this easily. When you are working the split single crochet, and you can already tell where this ends up looking knit, it's also known as the waistcoat stitch. It can often feel difficult if this is your first time. Common mistakes are not being able to get into your stitch, which means you've done the previous stitch too tight, which means you didn't pull up this loop enough. That is the most common mistake when doing this stitch. You do not want this to hurt your hands. Notice how easily my hook slides in and out of each stitch, and that's because I've given enough space on the round below in order for me to work this as quickly as I can, a single crochet stitch. It does take a little bit of practice, maybe angling your hook a bit this and a bit lower than your work so that it automatically pulls up that loop a little bit, or just being conscious to pull that up, just give it a little tug before completing the stitch and making sure that these V's are easy to get into for that next round. Also, if yours looks a little bit funny or a little bit off, it might be because we may have missed the V on the back. I'm going to show you here. Notice how that definitely looks a little bit off. Even if I try to correct this stitch, this looks not right. The reason why is that on the back of my work, I did not come out in the correct space. So you want to go straight through the center V, and on the back, straight through that upside down V. That will make sure that your stitches are lining up. You don't want to go left or right of this upside down V on the back. You want to come right through that center, and that will help it look really nice. So complete this round in one round of split single crochets, and then when you come back, we're ready to start that unique stitch pattern for the body.